religious movements often seem unshakable until they're not. And right now we're watching one of the most fascinating spiritual crises unfold in the Unification Movement, where the widow of its founder is completely rewriting his teachings against his explicit wishes.
That's such a dramatic situation. What exactly triggered this theological earthquake?
Well, at the center of it all is Hak Ja Han, who was once considered the true mother alongside Rev Moon. After his passing, she began making changes to his core teachings, something he specifically warned against, saying it would amount to spiritual betrayal.
So she's essentially going against the explicit instructions of the movement's founder. How are followers responding to these changes?
You know, that's where it gets really interesting. The movement is fracturing into multiple camps, some following Hak Ja Han's new interpretations, others staying strictly loyal to Rev Moon's original teachings. We're talking about families being torn apart, congregations splitting, and new leadership factions emerging in opposition.
The psychological dynamics at play here must be fascinating. What's driving someone who was once seen as the faithful partner of the Messiah to make such dramatic changes?
That's exactly what makes this so compelling. Her supporters are using these carefully crafted justifications like, we must modernize and true mother can reveal new truth. But here's the thing, this fits a classic pattern we've seen throughout religious history, where gradual shifts in authority lead to major theological departures.
Well, that reminds me of so many historical religious splits, like the early Christian church or various Islamic schisms.
Right, and what's particularly fascinating is how Hak Ja Han has gradually positioned herself not just as a custodian of the teachings, but as the preeminent voice of God's will on earth. She's even started minimizing her husband's legacy in some contexts, which many followers see as a form of spiritual coup.
So what does this mean for the future of the movement?
Well, looking at similar historical patterns, we're likely seeing the beginning of a permanent schism. The movement will probably split into multiple factions, each claiming to be the true inheritors of Rev Moon's legacy. But here's what's really interesting. This situation perfectly validates the very warnings he gave about not changing his teachings after his death.
The way you describe it, it's almost like watching a spiritual version of Shakespeare's King Lear unfold in real time.
That's such a brilliant analogy, because just like in King Lear, we're seeing how power can corrupt and how good intentions can lead to devastating consequences. The followers view this through an intense spiritual warfare lens. It's not just organizational politics, it's a cosmic battle between good and evil.
And I imagine this must be especially difficult for longtime followers who've built their entire lives around these teachings.
Absolutely devastating. Imagine dedicating decades of your life to a spiritual movement, raising your children in these beliefs, and then suddenly being forced to choose between following the original words of your founder or accepting these new interpretations. It's creating an impossible situation for many followers.
Looking ahead, what do you think will be the most significant consequences of this split?
You know, beyond the immediate fragmentation, I think the situation will serve as a powerful case study for future religious movements. It really highlights the critical importance of establishing clear succession plans and maintaining doctrinal integrity after a founder's passing. But perhaps most importantly, it shows how even the most unified movements can fracture when personal authority begins to override divine instruction.
That's such a profound observation about the nature of religious authority and succession.
And that might be the ultimate lesson here, that the preservation of religious teachings isn't just about words in a book. It's about maintaining the trust and unity of a community. Once that trust is broken, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to rebuild.